it was giving me like a 5-second delay.
It looks like it might be on now.
It's downloading.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe it should give you a 5-second delay, but that may become very annoying to you.
There we go.
It looks like it might be on now.
It's downloading.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe it should give you a 5-second delay, but that may become very annoying to you.
Here we go.
Hello.
Hi, we're just trying to connect up with the streaming so we can record.
Okay, good. I'm late, sorry.
Oh, welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're still having a 5-second delay here.
Hi, we're just trying to connect up with the streaming so we can record.
Good. I'm late, sorry.
So we're having, so do we want to continue live or? 5-second delay here.
Yeah, we might as well continue live.
Okay. We're live. So do we want to
Very good.
continue live or?
It's going to be hard to keep hearing that come back at me while I'm speaking. So we'll see how it goes. So I just want to give you some history about the co-responder program. I initiated the idea in the village of Skokie because I thought it was important for us to intervene appropriately in with mental health cases. About the co-responder program. I initiated the idea in the village of Skokie because I thought it was important for us to intervene appropriately in with mental health cases.
Brian, if you put yourself on mute, would we then not hear the 5-second? Should we try it again?
Okay. So what we want to do is intervene appropriately in mental health crisis, and a co-responder program seemed like it was the more appropriate way to respond to these calls. So how we started was the stakeholders got together and had several meetings. So when I say stakeholders, I mean the chief of police, Brian Breaker, the director of health and human services, Mike Charlie, the fire chief, Jeff Hoflick, the village manager, John Lockerbie, and me. And we did, the first step was we did some research into other places that use a co-responder model. That would be in Colorado and in some local municipalities. And then we also looked at the model in Eugene, Oregon, which is not a co-responder model, but it's a step past the co-responder model where they just have a social worker respond to calls and the EMT. And that's called Cahoots, and that's in Oregon. So we did some research, and we also collected preliminary data from the village to see how many of these calls we were getting and how we should think about doing the pilot for 1 month. And when we decided to do it for 1 month, we knew that was a short period of time, but we also knew that we were using our social workers on staff at the village, and we wanted to be aware of that was a load for those social workers, and we wanted to see what we learned from the process. So with that said, Brian and I are actually going to go through, and I don't know if Brian's going to be able to unmute to do this, but we're going to go through a PowerPoint explaining the co-responder program.
I'm unmuted. Am I going to hear the echo?
I don't hear it. I don't hear it now, the echo. Yeah, so go ahead.
All right. So I want to start with the first slide. So what is the co-responder program? It pairs first responders and social workers to respond to behavioral health-related calls from police and fire. It's a collaborative approach to de-escalate mental behavioral health situations. Potential outcomes of individual initial interactions with individuals, link individuals to appropriate behavioral mental health or substance abuse services, provide support and resources to family members or others on scene, transport individuals to hospitals or walk-in clinics. After case human services case management on a case-by-case basis. Really what that's saying is that this program was out there to make connections to the, to people, to individuals or families who are facing these crises in the moment. It was building trust with these individuals and these families, and also building trust in the community, and providing and increasing the delivery of services in the moment in real time as their systems, however how they're operating, was disrupted. And in that moment, we were able to make contact with them, and that's crucial, because in that crisis moment, that window of opportunity to invite change is limited. Once that window shuts, they go back to their normal operating system, and it just continues to process and fester till another crisis evolves. Also, the goal of this was to decrease the recidivism calls that we were receiving from the normal frequent flyers, if you will, that the police or fire would respond out to.
And you'll see that in the next. Next slide, please. So here are some of the program objectives, which Brian already touched on. So de-escalate a mental health crisis situation, provide immediate care, support, and advocacy in real time. And like Brian said, that's really important to do. Refer or link to needed services and or alternative care, reduce recidivism, provide follow-up and ongoing case management, divert individuals from criminal justice system and or from being institutionalized, divert individuals from being hospitalized, improve interactions between law enforcement and community members, increase percentage of first responder calls responded to by village social workers, and cross-training between social worker and CIT officers. So some of these program objectives, when we did our research, we found all of these to be true in their data. Like in Colorado, their co-responder program said that they definitely saw cross-training between social workers and their officers. They also saw a reduction of people making several calls to the police department, and definitely saw a de-escalation of mental health crisis situations.
So the collecting data part was that the crisis intervention screening form was created, and it was a form that was completed by social workers when responding out to the calls. Forms collected data, including client contact, demographic data, the identification of the initial type, the presenting problem, the patient's mental status, the recommended plan, action plan, the referral, and the case summary and disposition. Police department collected the data. The police used 2 data managing systems to collect data on police calls, the report management system and the computer aid dispatch system. Both systems captured this data. Really what that did was that it gave us a better connecting to the individuals. Like police come across these folks again, they have a better, they already have a touch and data information related to how they, what was the situation before, what was the services that were related to, and also to which social worker was on scene working with this individual or family. And in the sense that they can contact that social worker again and say, hey, we came across, Mr. and Mrs. Y, and this is what happened. And then we'd reach out to that family again and re-engage services or continue whatever services that we were, delivering. Also, too, the police would develop a better relationship with these folks by knowing them better, and be able to, know what services were being delivered, so they can reinforce and support them and continue to seek those services. And just developing the relationship within the community, and developing the community to the police as well as to the social workers.
The co-responder pilot program. The pilot was conducted during the entire month of May 2021. 3 village social workers responded to calls as follows. By the way, Brian was one of those social workers. Thank you, Brian. From 8 to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday during their normal working hours, on call from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. on weekdays, on call from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. on weekends. Police Department CIT, which is Crisis Intervention Team officers, would be sent to all calls where social workers may be beneficial. The CIT would request the social worker to respond to the scene if they thought it would be beneficial. The CIT officer would also request Skokie Fire Department medical assistance if they thought that was also beneficial. The CIT officer, social worker, and fire personnel would work the call together.
So the data that was collected from the pilot program, police data identified 136 calls in May 21, where individuals were experiencing crisis that may have warranted the respond of a social worker. Of the 136 calls, a social worker was requested and responded to 20 calls. Of the 20 calls, 12 referrals were successfully made and services linked 60%. Of the 20 calls, only 5 individuals were transported to the hospital for evaluation. 100% of these individuals went voluntarily with the use of no use of force required. And I think that is a key point to be highlighted. The other part of the 20 calls, 5 individuals, 25%, had repeated contact during the pilot program. So in these cases, so initially what happened was in the beginning of May, you may see like, oh, there was 130 calls, but there was only 20 call outs for the social workers to come out to. And I think what happened initially was that the police had to get us on their radar more and understand that, that we were there doing this work with them. And I think initially in the first week or week and a half, the police just weren't used to it. They were just, just going about their normal daily business until they were like, brought it to their attention again during their roll calls that, hey, these, this is what we're doing and you need to call these folks when you feel that they're needed. In about a week and a half going inwards, the calls started to come more frequently. And we were being, called out more often. And some of these cases, the other 20, there was, the percentages, I like to share a couple stories with you guys is that, there's one where there was an elderly gentleman call came in where a neighbor called 911 stating that this elderly gentleman was banging on his window, yelling for help. Police and fire responded to the house. Family members showed up. And they left it as that, but the family member was going to take care of the situation. However, credit to the sergeant on duty, I feel, is that he reached out, and I was actually called on this one. The sergeant called me. I went out there and sat with the family member and just kind of listened to the struggle and the weight of trying to manage their life as well as caring for their elderly parent. I also, I did an APS, an adult protective referral, just because I wanted another set of eyes on there. And I didn't call adult protective services as a punitive way, but just more as a supportive way for this family, for this, these children of this elderly parent. The success is that the child called me about a month later to tell me that they found a place for their father to go to, in which another family member was at, and they just felt better and more secure knowing that their father was going to be looked at 24/7, and they just felt more of a relief of the weight off their shoulders, worrying about their dad. So I felt that was a successful one. Another one, if I may, was a young man about 23 years old who's chronically mentally ill, chronically homeless, who wasn't able to stay with his father because they had younger children, and he was starting to become a risk factor, if you will, to the younger kids in the house. And the father couldn't have that. So the young man was staying outside in the backyard. And at that point, he was causing, some concerns with the other people living in the building. The owner of the building filed a no trespassing order against him. The police went out there not wanting to arrest this individual because an arrest was not going to solve the issue for this young man. We got involved. my colleague Iris was able to contact the attorney for the mental health downtown. We were able to get a writ, which is a written order from a judge to transport this person to the hospital. Collaboratively with us, the Skokie Police Department, we were able to get this person, this young man, to the hospital where he was inpatient and did well. Another case was homeless people that we came in contact with, where we were able to connect into connections for the homeless, get them linked up in the services. Other ones where we were out for domestic violence calls, we were able to get orders of protection, make sure that people were safe. So there were some success stories here that might have not have happened, maybe not, I don't know, if this program wasn't put into place.
So part of the reason for the pilot was to learn from it. And these are the lessons that we learned. Some we weren't surprised about. Social workers' response time to scene is important. There were 136 total calls identified as social service calls in May of 2021. 52 were outside of the pilot program's time of 8:30 a.m. to 9 p.m. Of the remaining 84 calls, CIT officers requested social workers respond to 20 calls. The primary reason for requesting response in 20 of the calls was the availability of the social worker to respond promptly. The lesson learned is that police and/or fire personnel on the scene with an individual going through a crisis need to have the resource of a social worker available at that moment and cannot wait 30 minutes to an hour for one to respond. So this is definitely how Denver does their co-responder program. The social worker and the CIT officer, or whatever they call them in Denver, ride together all day long, and they can respond together to the calls. To be effective, the social worker must be on duty in the village and available to immediately respond to the scene when needed. Social services delivered provided at the time of crisis provides the following benefits. Individuals are more likely and successfully to be linked to services. Repeated contact with the individuals is reduced, and individuals are more likely to voluntarily take next steps. So I do want to say something a little bit about trauma. So some of these people with mental health, in a mental health crisis, are trauma victims. And when you have a trauma victim, you want to be empathic and you also want to empower them. So forcing them to do something that they don't want to do is only going to re-trigger their trauma. So allowing them to talk to a social worker to make the decision themselves, quote unquote, voluntarily take the next steps, is really important in serving people who already are traumatized.
So building on what we've learned from the program, co-responder pilot program recommendations for phase 2. Assign a social worker and a CIT police officer full-time to the co-responder team. They will work together daily, together in an unmarked police car, and will be assigned all calls where it is evident the presence of a social worker would be beneficial. They will respond to other calls upon request of officers and fire personnel. They will conduct follow-up with individuals in crisis that were handled by other officers when they were not on duty. They will actively conduct case management on those individuals that have the most contact with. This requires the new hire of additional social worker, and the police department will reassign a current budget position to the new position of co-responder officer.
I think another important point that I was making about the trauma, and we talked a lot about this when we met with the stakeholders, was the idea that some people are traumatized by a police officer just because of their uniform. So or their car. So part of it is to be thoughtful of that, and to use an unmarked car, and maybe, you know, a different, like a sweater over their uniform or something too, so as not to cause a trigger when they walk up to the person.
How would you like to proceed, Edie?
So I guess next would be just to ask if there's any comments or questions. Obviously, Brian was on the ground, so he can, give you examples which is also very helpful. Thank you, Brian. Bonnie, do you have a question? You're muted.
Okay, sorry, it took a second to unmute. Firstly, thank you for that. That was wonderful, and the program really sounds outstanding and very impressive. The question I have is about criteria for the co-responders. Now it sounds like it's a little bit loose, that anything that the responding officer believes would benefit from the presence of a social worker qualifies. Is there any thought to building certain criteria or identifying, more specifically what types of calls would qualify for this, or that you would expect the best outcomes from?
Brian, we did have a list when we met with the stakeholders of a definition of what a mental health crisis. There are criteria. Do you happen to have that list?
I don't have that. I don't have it with me. I apologize. But Bonnie, to kind of answer your question, it's anything that's non-criminal is the first point. It's anything under the mental health umbrella, or family violence or family disturbance umbrella, whether it's domestic violence between individual intimate partners, or family issues, or mental or homeless issues, things of that.
Does data exist about, more specifically, what types of events this is likely to be most successful with? Or is it anything that's in the mental health realm?
I don't have any data in front of me that specifies one particular area, but I think as a whole, in all general, I think it's just beneficial. I think what this program offers is making that connection in real time, and that's where you can, I think, where you can bring about the change. When that crisis window opens, it's only open for a short period of time, and before we were on this, we would get a referral and we'd reach out 24 to 48 hours later. That window's closed, and that family's back to their normal operating system until the next crisis arises.
Annie, I can get you that list. I should have had the whole packet with me. I'm sorry. I will get you that list of criteria that we did put together when we met. And the data that we have is based on other programs. Right. And I could also get you some of their data of the benefits. Now, in Denver, they specifically have a co-responder program. It's a two-tier program. They have a co-responder program, and then they have what they call a STAR program, which the co-responder is a police officer with a social worker or mental health professional. The STAR program is a mental health professional with EMT or from the medical and responding. And they, with that two-tier program, they talk specifically about how necessary it is to have the first program, the co-responder program, with a police officer for anything that might include violence. And since we believe at the village, or the stakeholders that spoke, and this is what I believe too, sometimes you don't know if a situation is going to be violent. So at this point, I think it's better as a start to start with something we have in place with police officers not knowing when there's going to be violence or not going to be violence, and then collect data and see how all of this information, what the information tells us. So I hope that helps, and I'll get you the criteria.
I have a question.
Okay.
Can I ask?
Yeah, go ahead. We'll do you, then Arnie, then Melissa.
All right. Two questions, two simple questions. I was wondering, I know Trustee Edie has talked about a similar example in Denver, Colorado. Do we have any of these successful stories, any success stories of this kind of a project in the Chicagoland area, or at least in the Illinois area? Do we have any success stories like that? One, that's straightforward question. Another question was, do we extend this program to facilities? Like what I mean is like group homes, and because there are people who are residing in multiple buildings like that. Those are the places I know about. Many buildings. I see that we need to extend to those facilities also. Being a social worker, I think this is a very nice program, and Trustee Edie has presented it very well. Kudos for that, and I salute the village for initiating this program. It is a nice program. So those are my two questions. Thank you.
So Chicago is starting a co-responder program too. I don't have all the information about Chicago's program. I know there's other places, other municipalities that have some version of that. I mean, Brian, you said that Glencoe, has one. Evanston is looking into it. Evanston is moving not towards a co-responder program, but towards the other program that, like the STAR program in Denver or the Cahoots program, but they've kind of installed on that because they haven't been able, I'm not sure of what stalled them, but I don't think that they're up and running yet. Brian, do you know of any others that?
A lot of municipalities have police social workers that they utilize at times for this, but nothing as specific or geared towards the Denver model here in my Illinois that I'm aware of.
Your other question was about like group homes, or, I mean, anytime, it wouldn't matter where the location was. If there's an incident in Skokie that requires a CIT officer to go out with a social worker, then that's what would happen. So if it's at a group home, then they would go to the group home. Is that what your question was?
Because the reason why I asked was that there are so many vulnerable citizens, senior citizens especially, staying in group homes, and sometimes I hear that sometimes their concerns are not addressed properly. So an involvement by the village of Skokie in through programs like this would really help them. So nursing homes, group homes, assisted living facilities, we have many such institutions in the village of Skokie area. So if we are addressing that, that would be an added resource for those people who are really residing in those places.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Thank you. Do Arnie and Melissa? And then we'll get Wendy.
Okay. I just wanted to mention that Professor Harvey Traeger from the University of Illinois at Jade Adams School of Social Work developed a whole, not only textbooks and research on police social work models, of which there are many social workers that are working in many police departments, I'm sure that you know, throughout the Chicago area, because in Chicago, we had such a development of research and training for police social work models in the entire Chicago area over the last 30 or 40 years. I mean, so you probably already know that. I don't know about the co-responder model, but when I was a clinical social worker at Great Lakes Navy Base as the senior social worker, I would sit down and review all the daily police reports with the chief of police that would send me to take a look at all of domestic violence, trauma, all those cases, and assign social workers to who specialized in those particular areas to make follow-up calls. And if that required a police officer to go with them for the follow-up, who initially took the call, then they would follow up on the next day while it was still fresh. And I've had a lot of experience in doing that in my own clinical practice over 40 years in doing that kind of model, which is different from the co-responder model. And the co-responder model sounds like an outstanding effort by the village. But certainly there are other models which don't require an assigned social worker to go strictly to every home, but filtering back to the family services department for them to then assign and follow up with a social worker on staff.
Thank you, Ernie.
Yes, thank you.
Ernie. Great comments. Melissa, Wendy, and then if there's one more comment, then maybe we should move on after that. This has been an incredible discussion.
I was really glad to learn that this pilot program was going to happen when I read about it in the Skokie newsletter. So thank you so much for making it happen. And I'm really glad to hear about how it went. From what I know about the CAHOOTS model and the co-responder models, some issues that sometimes arise are educating everyone from the dispatchers on, and it sounds like you were able to address that. You also have to have the support services available, and it sounds like you were able to utilize those that you had using adult protective services, and you had a hospital bed available to admit someone to the hospital. So that's great. I appreciate your recommendations to hire another social worker, because this is resource intensive, and to include full-time CIT officers as part of the co-responder team. I don't know how many CIT officers there are right now in Skokie. Do you know?
I knew you were just gonna, when you started talking about that, I knew you were gonna ask that question. I know we're at a higher level and we keep moving up, but I don't know the exact number. Do you, Brian? Well, so I will find that out right now.
Okay. And I second the Jane Addams. They're a great resource. I know Amy Watson there too is very involved in.
I did want to say too, I forgot a piece of our stakeholder when we were meeting, and I named that group. We also had a stakeholders meeting with all the providers in Skokie, the mental health providers, so that they, including the hospital, so that they would understand what we were doing, and we tried to get their feedback and input into what they thought and how we should do it. And so that was helpful too, because they all said, we're on board, whatever we can do. This is, we would like to participate. So I wanted to bring that up too. So thank you for bringing that to my attention, Melissa. And I'm going to ask how many CIT officers, and I'll get back on when I.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, Wendy.
Thank you, Brian and Edie, for that presentation. It sounds like a wonderful program, and I appreciated your recommendations. So my question is, what happens now with your recommendations? Is this something like, what's the plan to do with them? Is this something that you present to the village board? Is it something you're ready to move forward with officially? Like, what happens next?
I would say that we're ready to move forward with it. We do have to hire a social worker. And we do have to, get the dollars in place for the police officer position. It's actually, but I think that we're ready to move forward with it.
So can you walk me through how you do that? Like, what is the process? Do you take that to, a village board meeting and make the same presentation and make a motion? Does it have to go to a committee for, like, when can the public expect to see a full-time rollout of the program?
Well, I haven't talked to the village manager yet about how we will be presenting this at the board meeting, but I'm not sure that the board needs to approve it, that it's already a go, it's already moving forward, but I would like them to have a presentation on it too. So we could let you know when it's going to be in front of the board.
Yeah, I'm sorry, just as a follow-up to Edie's answer, I wonder if it would be helpful when you do that, or well, you're saying you're not sure if it needs the approval, but if there is something that should need approval, I wonder if it would be helpful to have members of the community, you know, send in comments in support of it if for some reason you're concerned that it would, you would have a hard time having it happen.
I appreciate that. At this point, I think we're ready to go. And it's just a matter of putting things in place. And I would like a public presentation though at some point so that people could hear and could make their comments.
Okay, thank you.
Arnie, before I give you a second shot, is there anybody else who would like to make a comment or ask a question of either Trustee Sucker or Brian? Okay, not seeing any hands. It looks like you may have the oh, I'm sorry, who?
This is Mike. I'd actually like to ask a quick question.
Oh, Mike, I'm sorry. You do have your hand up over there in the corner. Excellent.
You know, there's lots of windows, hard to see us all, right?
Yeah.
I have a question about the data part. So right now you're collecting some data, and I'm curious if you'll continue to do that moving forward, in part because I think there's a lot that can be learned about, you know, both how the program operates, and it might help you right size it. So for example, you know, understanding when these calls tend to happen might help you schedule when the, you know, social worker's there or not. Comparing similar police incidents prior, you know, to this intervention and then after, and getting a feel for like the outcomes of those. Like there's all kinds of really interesting ways you could structure that data that might even help providers know which kinds of services they may need to have more of, right? So if you're seeing a lot of calls for, say, substance abuse, but you're finding there's giant wait times for that, having that kind of aggregate data over time might be a really great way for the village to plan going forward.
So this is going to be very data driven. So I'm glad you brought that up, Mike, because we need to keep collecting data. That is what's going to be the driving force on how we make changes and how we get better and how we think about moving forward. So yes, we plan to collect data on an ongoing basis. And yes, I hope that we will use it to think through our next decisions and steps.
Yeah, it sounds like a great program. I hope we'll get updates in the future then.
And Mike, if I may add, is that, so during the presentation that Chief Baker presented to us at the end of the pilot program, the timelines of these calls that came in, the majority of them came in between 7 a.m. and 3 p.m. and 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. Surprisingly, the overnight shift, the midnight shift, there was a somewhat decrease in the number of call outs. But during that 7 a.m. to 11 p.m., they were pretty much the same amount of calls, similar in calls. Mike Charlie, the Director of Health and Human Services, created a database for us here, an updated database. And ongoing, we've been collecting that data of the type of call outs that we still go out on, or the referrals that we receive from police and fire, whether they're well-being checks, a domestic violence call, you know, whatever it may be, adult protective service referral, substance abuse referral. So we are still engaged in collecting data.
That sounds great. That's really interesting. I have seen that before in other data, the whole like after 11 p.m. things really tail off. And so I think that'll be really interesting to keep track of, just to get a feel for time of day when incidences occur.
Great. I'm going to give Arnie the last comment or question. And I apologize to anybody else who does have any thoughts or questions, but you certainly can reach Trustee Sucker or Brian outside of this meeting to pose any additional questions or comments to them. So Arnie, it's yours.
I would hope that that Brian, your department would be able to continue to give feedback of what happened with these cases to the police department personnel themselves in your trying to continue to maintain and get feedback and numbers on your continuing research, that without giving the police officers some feedback on what's happening with the cases that they're referring in, you're going to lose momentum of what you've started. And I think it's outstanding what you've started, but if they don't get some feedback on what's going with the cases that you've worked with, like the 20 that you started with, I think it's going to be a missing opportunity.
Absolutely, Arnie, absolutely. And interesting, after the program ended, the police were still calling us, even on the weekends.
Okay.
Where I live in now, so I'm close. So I was going out and continuing the call outs, because I think the police at that point started getting used to us and started recognizing the collaboration, and that, you know, having a social worker on scene is just an extra resource for them in helping them help the person that they're called out for.
Exactly.
And also too, you know, even on the follow-ups, calling the officer afterwards and say, hey, I'm just letting you know, this is where this case ended up. This is what, you know, that call that you made got this person into this service. So absolutely, it's crucial. The momentum is important. Absolutely. Good call.
So just to follow up with Melissa's question, so we have 48 CIT officers and we have 115 officers. The CIT, I mean, I do know a little bit about this, that the CIT classes are hard to get into. They're certified classes, and we can only do a few officers at a time. And that, we want more officers trained in CIT. We even hosted an event so that if you're a host, you get to have more of your participants take the class. So we are, moving forward to try to get our officers into those classes. And Wendy, just to be clear to you too, to follow up, there's no formal action needed for this to move forward in terms of the board voting. So I just wanted to make sure I was clear with you about that. That's why we are continuing to move forward with it. There's no formal action required.
Well, thank you very much, Trustee Sutker and Brian. First, for working so hard on putting together an incredible program, and also for presenting it to us. Very informative. And if there's anything as a commission that we could do down the road to help out, certainly let's bring it up at the meeting.
Okay, I just got an update. We now have 54 CIT officers. So if we sit here long enough, maybe the number will keep going.
Very good. Very good. Okay. Well, I think we'll move forward with our commission meeting. We're not going to let Brian off the hot seat at this point, because the next item on the agenda is a Health and Human Services report, and that's for Brian.
Okay. With the health department, we're entering into the flu shot season. Skokie residents are available to get those shots. We're getting updates on the guidelines for the boosters, on when those will be coming out. Those are out to folks who are, having immune deficiencies or more vulnerable to getting sick. I believe those are coming forward. So we're getting geared up for that. Human services, it's business as usual, which we're busy with calls and people coming in. We're seeing people individually live or in person. Yeah, that's where we're at.
An incredibly busy time for Health and Human Services Division. Again, thanks for all you're doing. Old business.
Wait,
Just-
just one sec, just
Oh,
to
I'm
add,
sorry.
there's
Yeah.
some questions,
please.
but also I wanted to add to that you can go on the Skokie website now and sign up for the flu shots. It opened today.
Arnie?
Yeah, I posed a question by email about a couple hours ago. Is there any thought to the health department providing the senior shot besides the regular shot? And is that a fiscal issue for not offering the senior shot?
Ernie, I saw your email. I don't have it. I will check with Sue Reesberg, the head nurse, tomorrow, and I will get that back. I'll get information to you.
Yeah, I've had a lot of residents ask me about that.
Yep, I'll find that out for you, Arnie.
Thank you.
Great.
I also have had that question asked, so it would be good to know that.
Thank you for the question. Very good. Okay, the next item is old business produce initiative. We've collected about 1,800 pounds of produce by our crude estimates, and all was delivered. I think Brian has been doing most of the delivery on Monday morning to the Niles Township Food Pantry. So thank you, Brian. There wasn't any pickup last week since the farmers market was moved due to the backlot bash. Several commissioners, thank you very much, who have volunteered who have helped at the produce initiative. What wound up real rewarding was I put together a page on Sign Up Genius, and I guess it was distributed a little beyond their commission. And within a couple of weeks, every slot throughout the whole summer was already taken. So apologies to people on the commission who may have wanted to come and help out again. I think we're adequately staffed. I believe that's also St. Paul Church has been very helpful in both providing the kitchen to store the produce overnight and supplying volunteers to help with the pickup. So, and thanks to Pastor Henry. Questions on that? It was about the only initiative that we've had going during the summer. I'd like to, if it's okay with everybody on the commission, I'd hopefully like to go to about 8:15 for this meeting, because there was one other topic that I'd like to start a little effort on. We've kind of pushed it off for a number of meetings. We were supposed to have started in May. It was deferred to the fall. We have a lot of new commissioners with broad and diverse backgrounds who can contribute much to the commission and the community. So our challenge is really, how do we utilize everybody's abilities, but with a few conditions. Obviously, we don't want to come up with initiatives that are going to overtask the support staff. And we want to also stay within the scope of our committee's purpose and mission statement, which is kind of important things. Back in July, I had a meeting with the mayor and John Lockerbie about reviewing the purpose and the mission of the commission, and they were quite supportive of us taking a look at that, and also at the initiatives that we have, and identifying possibly new initiatives that would fit within the mission of our commission. So what I'd like to do, or start doing the process of this evening, and I'm hardly an expert on this, is a process of reviewing our purpose and mission. I don't want to get heavily into initiatives, certainly don't want to get into details of any initiatives at this time. This we could defer to later meetings when we get together down the road. So what I did was send out a copy of the stated purpose and mission statements for our commission. Hopefully you had a chance to take a look at it. If not, I can let me briefly read it out to you. And then I have a few questions I'd like to ask to begin a discussion. Wendy, did you have any comment? No? Okay.
No, sorry, people here. talking
Okay,
about-
it's just a fly or something. This comes from, you can find the purpose and the mission on the Skokie website. Commission on Family Services provides a forum for focus on a wide range of issues concerning Skokie's most vulnerable citizens. Recommendations on policies, programs, and procedures are made to the mayor and the board of trustees. That's the purpose. Mission statement sort of overlaps. It says to facilitate improvement in the quality of life for Skokie's most vulnerable persons, regardless of age, physical well-being, or socioeconomic status, through public information, education, and advocacy. So that's our stated purpose and mission. I'd like to begin by asking the commission several questions regarding that purpose and mission statement and what it's calling for. Hopefully, Brian, you'll capture responses from the commissioners. First, are we providing a forum on issues concerning Skokie's most vulnerable citizens? Are we making recommendations on policies, programs, and procedures to the mayor and board of trustees? Are we facilitating improvement in the quality of life through public information, education, and advocacy? So those are the main principles of our commission. And after we discuss this a bit, maybe we'll look at, are these the directions we want or the village needs us to be going in? Wendy? Yeah,
Thank
please.
you. But sort of as a precursor to answering that question, I want to point out that we specify in the mission statement, persons regardless of age, physical well-being, or socioeconomic status. I feel like we could be unintentionally excluding residents that could very much need our advocacy and education. There are many protected classes, such as the classes that are protected under fair housing laws that are not included in what's listed there. So I think it would be wise in this process to take a moment to make sure that we are including all of the various types of residents of Skokie that could need the commission and who are entitled to, rights.
Good. Yeah. And in these areas, we could also, as we look towards other areas that we may be missing, maybe there's room for collaboration, either with other commissions or with other outside nonprofit groups.
Absolutely. I just think, like, for example, we didn't mention regardless of gender, regardless of LGBTQIA status, like there's a lot of things that by not including them, they seem omitted. So I don't want to, I don't want to get stuck in the weeds, but I think there maybe is a way that we can make sure it's clear that we're including all.
Very good. Gender identification.
Many things. I think it would be wise to look at all the various protected classes.
Very good. Yeah. Any?
Hello. Can you hear?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, I agree with that, because when you were saying that mission statement or vision, there were some lacking stuff in there. And I agree with, we have to include the LGBT and other groups. And maybe we could craft it where all are covered to make sure that they are included in this mission statement or vision. That's all.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Shazan?
Okay. Harold, you and I had a meeting, a couple of months ago regarding this same topic.
Yes.
And I was, thinking over this item. You said that we could discuss this in the September session. So I was looking forward to that opportunity. As we all know, our commission is, the Family Service Commission. So I was always thinking that are we really doing something more in the family, services concept? True, we are doing a lot of services, especially, but we are focusing more on the vulnerable citizens, senior citizens. Those are all really eligible people. But my opinion or my feeling is that we should extend our service to other issues of families. For example, there are linguistic issues, especially Skokie is like United Nations. We have people from all countries, and the percentage, if you look at the diversity, it is one of the most diverse municipalities in the Midwest. Then that is a linguistic, that is one issue. Then another issue is domestic violence, which is not properly reported. That is another issue. So just to name a few. So I was wondering, so we could focus on these issues as well, so that our magnitude of the service for this commission could be extended, and we could be a more vibrant commission, when we look at the big picture. That's what.
Very good. And at the end of the discussion, what I will be asking from the commissioners, and these are great ideas, is if there are several folks on the commission who would like to take a stab at, if they feel rewording possibly the purpose or the mission statement to include some of these additional subpopulations, you want to call them, and maybe after we get something in writing at the end of this process, we'll bring it back to the commission and again bring it up for discussion. I don't know if I mentioned, but if we do make changes to both either the mission or the purpose, it does have to go, I believe, and Edie, Trustee Secker will correct me, I believe it does have to go through the Skokie board for approval. But these are great comments, and when the mission and purposes were put together in those days, they probably hadn't, it just wasn't in the cards to include other of these groups within the purview, but I believe it should be. I'm going to ask Brian a question. There are some great comments in the chat. You may want to bring up, everybody could bring up their chat. Is there a way we can capture all that? Can you save that? And
We're recorded. We're recording.
Good. Okay. And if we distribute it after the meeting to all the commissioners?
This recording?
No, but particularly the comments that are in the chat. Can you get it by clicking your chat button at the bottom if you're on Microsoft?
I'm looking at them. I could, I mean, they're there. So I'm hoping that I can save them. I hope they'll be, they're recording in.
They are.
Okay. Okay, they'll be in the recording. Okay, very good. Okay, anybody, any other comments, things you want to add, Bonnie?
Thank you. I actually have a question, and that is, are you or is anybody able to tell me, because I'm new to this, what historically the approach of this commission has been. Like, what has the focus been? Has it been on, vulnerable, which is the word that's used in the mission statement, on a particular type of vulnerable population? Like, how has the mission statement been interpreted historically by this commission?
I think the best way to interpret it is by some of the initiatives that we've had in the past. We've had only several major initiatives. We've attempted additional initiatives, which for various reasons didn't work. So for senior populations, every other year we've been having we call it Boomers and Beyond, the Senior Resource Fair, where we collaborate with a number of other nonprofits in the area to put it on, and it's been quite successful. And along with that, on a separate day, but that same week, we do present either lectures or, in one case, a movie that goes along with the topic. The produce initiative that we've been doing for a number of years and also been quite successful has been focused on people who are food insecure and depend on the Niles Township Food Pantry for some of their sustenance, and particularly fresh produce has been something that the food pantry hasn't always been able to make available to them. So it fills a little niche there. Back several years ago, we're in the process of a very extensive program that was directed towards people with disabilities. But unfortunately, for a number of reasons, we weren't able to proceed with it. But and offline, we can talk about some of those initiatives because they may very well be things that we want to bring up down the road. Those have been the major initiatives. Some of the old time trustee commissioners can probably speak up if there's any other initiatives that I missed.
Thank you.
Okay, but certainly there are other vulnerable populations that, due to resource issues or whatever, we haven't been able to reach.
One quick clarification that I would make is there is also a Human Relations Commission, which their stated purpose is to promote understanding and respect between people of different religions and ethnicities. I'll post their purpose statement in the chat there. So if we redefine our purpose statement a little bit, we'll just want to be mindful that we certainly can work in concert with them, but have a distinct purpose. I think the Family Services Commission is more advocacy and policy and program oriented. Whereas the human relations, it's more about encouraging respect and dialogue and understanding amongst some protected classes. So just a distinction to keep in mind, I think.
Very, very good point, Matt. And that's one thing as we look towards our mission and our purpose. We don't want to overlap, or we don't want to go into the purview of any other commission that's out there. That doesn't mean, as Matt says, that we can't work collaboratively with them on particular initiatives. And personally, I think that's a terrific thing for us to be able to do. Let me, as our time is getting fairly short on this, and I believe we'll continue at our next meeting on this issue, but we're going to capture some of these ideas and reshare them. Pardon?
You go on a walk. Can you come down?
I'm sorry, Nicola was getting some.
Sorry.
This is Humphrey. If you could mute.
Sorry.
Okay, so actually, my only other question is sort of being addressed already, and that was simply: are there changes to our purpose and mission statement that would be beneficial to the Skokie public, and is not within the scope of other commissions? And that's what we're looking at over here. And as we look at potentially extending our reach to other populations within the village that we haven't addressed before, I think we'll be looking at initiatives directed towards them. Any thoughts or Well, I think the ideal would be if you come up with any ideas, if you want to add or modify what our mission statement is, please send it to me and to Brian in an email. And if you would like to be on a small, we'll call it task force subgroup, to work to draw up a revised mission statement, please let me know or let Brian know, and we'll put something like that together. And you could probably meet over Zoom or, and am I correct, Brian? You may be more familiar with the Open Meetings Act, but if it's just a small group of people as a subgroup, they can meet without being part of the entire
I believe
commission.
so. I believe so.
Okay, so let us know. I think that's going to be, it's probably going to be something that's going to stretch over a number of months. But I think that could be valuable as we set our maybe new course or maybe slightly adjusted course. Or maybe we'll decide we're doing everything perfectly fine and stick with what we're doing. One last thing, and we're just about at that point that I'd give other people a last comment, but I want to mention as you think through what other areas we may want to look at, there are some reports that are available, some of them on the Skokie website. Some of them are fairly long, so if you want to just take a look at it and see if any ideas jump out at you. Examples, there's the 2018 citizen survey results, and I believe, as I saw in the latest Skokie news, that's a triennial thing, and they're going to be redoing it, asking a certain number of residents in Skokie to again take a survey. There's, bear with me as I find the next page here, which I seem to have lost. Okay, I had a bunch of other, I won't be able to give you all of those because that one sheet I don't have with me. Oh, okay. There was November 2019, there was a Skokie Community Forum. I don't know if I took part in that. I don't know if anybody else did, but there is a report that came out. You can find demographic statistics on the Skokie website. There's a large report on the Community Development Block Grant Action Plan, which deals with some of the at-risk or vulnerable populations. And finally, if you really want to delve a little more into possibilities, and we looked at it a few years ago, is the AARP has the Livable Communities website. And I strongly encourage you to go to that website. They have an incredible amount of valuable information. So it may give us a lot of ideas of directions that we can go in this commission, or ideas that we could recommend to the village. So that's about all I have over here. Are there any other comments from anybody on the commission? Yeah, Wendy?
They're sort of questions, and maybe Edie and Brian may be able to answer them. One thing is that this month is going to be catastrophic for a lot of the citizens of the village. The moratorium on evictions was not extended, and the extended unemployment benefits are coming to an end all at the same time. So I'm wondering if the village, has any sort of, not necessarily plan, but any sort of more than usual services in place for helping what I'm sure will be, a chunk of our residents that are getting, a double punch of bad, situations happening this month. And the other question that is also for them is that I'm wondering if we're expecting that Skokie might be welcoming some refugees that have recently left Afghanistan, and how we'll be able to help them, certainly as a commission and or just as, regular citizens.
Well, it's,
Sorry, didn't mean to. I know it's just like a real downer, but
no.
it's
an
a
important
lot.
question
I
to
know.
ask, Mindy. It's an important question to ask. With the eviction rate, it's unknown at this point how we're going to handle this, what we're going to see. We've been kind of hoping the way the process will work, the courts will be overwhelmed. It'll be a long process before they can do anything. There's always been this unsaid rule that judges will not evict anybody during the winter months. The sheriff, then you have to look at what Sheriff Dart's going to do with his officers. Is he going to send, do they have the time and the manpower, if you will, to go out and serve all these evictions when they come? There's so many unknown questions at this point about what's going to happen. We're still getting federal funded money to help people with their rents. We just went through a last grant of $90,000 with the work of Connections for the Homeless. We're waiting to get refunded for that, and that's going to help renters as well as homeowners. We're waiting for that to come in. We're expecting that to come relatively soon in September. That's one aspect. With the refugees coming in from Afghanistan, if folks came in with that, we'd reach out to the communities that we work with the ELL and try to get services put in place with them. There's a lot unknown, so we're talking, we're working things out, but how that wave comes and when it comes, we don't know. But we're doing our best to be somewhat ready for it.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sure you guys work with Township, who will be involved in helping this process as well. And of course, if there's any way that, members of this commission or, residents of Skokie at large can help, I have no doubt that if you guys put out a call, you will get a response.
We have great partnership within the village. Skokie's a rich community when it comes to resources.
Mm-hmm.
The township, I can't speak highly enough. They do a wonderful job, Bonnie and her crew there. They're a great resource for us.
Mm-hmm. It would be great if we could help. Yeah.
And just to add to that too, there's other, like the agency that I work for, JCFS Chicago, we have resources also that the village can connect people to. We have HIAS that helps with refugees and immigrants, and I don't know how that will work, but we now, HIAS is now located in Skokie, so we've had several meetings with the village to kind of connect the two to figure out how they can work together. So I think that will be another resource as well.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, if there aren't any other questions, Ryan, were there any citizens who were connected to the streaming?
I don't see anybody, Harold.
Okay, so then definitely no comments from them. In that case, that brings us pretty much to the end of the meeting. If nobody has a last minute thought, other than please everybody stay well, stay safe, we can adjourn.
Thank you, everybody. Stay safe, be well.
Do we have to move to adjourn?
Oh.
We might as well take a move to adjourn. Okay,
I'll
Wendy
move to
moves second.
I second.
Okay, if there are no objections, we have adjourned. Okay.
Take care.